So this whole idea about having the same metabolism, a very similar metabolism at birth is one myth. If it's different is a myth. We're all more or less the same. All right. Now, the second myth, think about it. When you're a teenager and you see teenage kids full of energy, running around, going crazy, eating multiple dinners, bouncing off the wall with energy, people think their metabolism is actually going through the roof as they're growing. That's a common misconception as well. Because here's what has been discovered about human metabolism. There's a study with 6,000 people, over 20 countries, and 90 researchers were involved. And they looked at people from 2 days old to 90 years old, the entire human lifespan, and looked at their metabolism. And they looked at it from 20 countries, so all the differences out there. And what they did is they studied everyone's metabolism at their different ages using the same technique, which is they gave them a drink of water, a cup of water. And you're saying, well, how could that work? Well, what scientists do is they can take water, which is H2O. I think most people recognize the symbol for water, the chemical symbol for water, H2O. You can tweak the hydrogen, the H. You can tweak the oxygen, the O. Give them a cup of water with that tweaking, drink it, and then your body, your metabolism is going to process the hydrogen and process the oxygen in ways that you can measure. How do you measure it? You measure it in your breath, okay? You measure it in your blood, and you measure it in your urine, okay? And what they did is they studied these 6,000 people from 2 days old to 90 plus years old across all these countries. And they found that human metabolism is hardwired to go through only 4 stages all throughout our life.
Hi, my name is Aggie and this is Biohacking Bestie. The one-stop shop for a modern queen, where you can find biohacking courses, self-growth courses, and where you can find the most incredible community of women so you can hit all of your biohacking goals and beyond. I'm so glad we connected. I've been admiring your work for such a long time, and I love people that are just share the knowledge, but with so much joy and so much light. And I think sometimes we forget that we're in the wellness space. And if someone is angry and teaches everything that there is about nutrition,
that is so true. Where are you based, Aggie?
I'm in LA.
You're in LA, okay. And are you originally from like California?
No, I'm Polish.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm Polish, and
so Aggie is Agnieszka.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. And I'm so happy we're connected because, like I said, I think it's so important to, I deeply resonate with your message, but I think more so I resonate with, like, okay, he seems healthy. And I think maybe it's just like, I live between LA and actually Bali. And I think the Eastern culture, where definition of health is much broader than just not having disease, but also having a beautiful mindset and a smile on your face, it resonates with me way more than just in the Western world, when you get so many healthy people that are just angry and resentful. And I'm like, I don't like that.
Yeah, no, it is true. It is true that there's a lot of in the health and wellness space. I think that people, there's a certain amount of polarization that I find actually sends the wrong message when it comes to health and wellness. You know?
Right? Yeah. So what is health to you? How would you describe health?
Okay. Are we taping?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I will tell you that health to me is really the complete package that allows us to enjoy our lives, live and thrive in a joyful and productive way at any point in our life. And I have to preface what I just said by saying that I'm a medical doctor. I'm an MD. I'm trained in internal medicine. And in medical school, one of the things that I noticed right at the very beginning, from the beginning of my education, medical education, is that doctors, medical students are trained to understand disease. This is cancer. This is diabetes. This is Alzheimer's disease. This is Hashimoto's. But we're never taught about what is health. And in fact, for most healthcare professionals, health is simply the absence of disease. Our work is really about fixing broken bodies. And if your body's not broken, that's not really part of our work. And in fact, that always bothered me that the that the importance, the mission of health, which is really my mission, seemed not to be the mission of the medical community. And so as somebody who went through that entire program and became an internal medicine doc and also was a scientist and also have been involved with developing cancer treatments and treatments for wound healing and vision loss, one of the things that I realized as I went through my journey is that health is the white space that the medical community doesn't talk about. And yet the answers to health are really hidden in plain sight. It is, in fact, the one thing that we are studying the opposite for. So when you study disease, you study cancer. And if you're going to study cancer, you're going to study the disease, but you're also going to compare it to the healthy. And everybody just assumes the healthy is not of interest and not of importance, and they want to dive into the cancer. So I just cranked my turret to really begin looking at the healthy part. And that to me gave me a not just an existential or philosophical sense of what health is, but actually a mechanistic sense as a scientist to say, oh, health isn't just the absence of disease. Health is the result of, these are the processes in the body. And what's wonderful is that we're hardwired with these processes, and the foods and life activities that give us joy actually support and boost our health defenses. And so to me, the books I've written about, like Health, Eat to Beat Disease and Eat to Beat Your Diet, the work that I present when I'm on podcasts or my YouTube channel is really as much about the joy of health as it is about the science. But I think both of those things are really important to bring together because they are the bookends that everybody really should understand. There's a lot, just like a book or bookshelf, the bookends are important. There's lots of different types of books. So if you want to be intermittent faster, if you want to be a vegetarian, if you want to be a vegan, however you want to do it, we're still between these bookends. And I think there's a lot of room for a lot of different approaches to be able to maintain health.
Amazing. I would like to focus on women. So my podcast is designed for women, and I feel like we have been massively represented in the biohacking space and a lot of times treated, even in the podcast, I listen to your podcast with incredible men, and sometimes I feel like as women, we listen and don't necessarily feel super represented in the health space because there's so many nuances, and we obviously have different hormones. So well, I first of all, maybe let's start with the question: what would you say would be different if you were giving advice to men versus women? Would you approach fasting differently? Would you approach diets differently? What would be some of the things?
I'm glad that you brought up this long history of medicine, nutrition, you name it, in the health world that's really been biased towards studies involving men, data involving men. It's a bias, and and I think that where we are evolving to is not only recognizing that there are gender specific differences between men and women, but that within men and within women, within the genders, there are also huge inter-individual differences. Meaning that if I was with my brother, even though we share the same genetics, even though we're both male, we would still have lots of differences. Similarly, if you had a sister and you were to compare that, even though you're both women, there would still be differences. And as you go
We have
through,
very different diets, and she's thriving, I'm thriving, but we eat completely different things.
well, and the thing is that as you go through life, those differences are going to continue to evolve more and more. And so I sort of recognize the gender inequality of medical research as a misfortune of the past. It's a relic. It's an artifact of the way the research was done in the past. But I think that but I don't have an activist approach to that. What I say is that what we should be doing. We should really be looking at individualized nutrition, individualized wellness. Take into account gender, but gender isn't the only thing. Gender is one of the important things, but these our individual differences are profound. And that way, we also are able to avoid being slotted into a bucket. I think that that's one of the things that's happening that, when you look at biohacking, one of the things that allows us to do individually is to quantify ourselves. And as we do that, we realize we are, in fact, quite different than anyone else. The gender factors in, but so many other things also factor in. Past exposures, epigenetics, behavior, mental health and wellness, of course, physical health, comorbidities. All of these things really make us individual. And I will tell you, as a medical doctor who's trained to prescribe medicines, drugs, right? So for penicillin, you would write the same dose for anybody who comes into your clinic. And yet that's clearly not the optimal way to be able to approach things. So forget about penicillin. What about diet? Diet's going to be different as well. Mm-hmm. And it's not just gender, it's also inter-individual. So getting to know oneself, if you are advocating for yourself, is the single most important thing. In my books, I write about, self-knowledge is powerful knowledge because you have to understand yourself. And I think too often we don't take that time to understand who we are, our own preferences, and what our own behaviors are.
100%. Obviously, it's really challenging because we hear, even I know you love fasting, and I know that, like, I also love fasting. I also know that a lot of women struggle with fasting because they have history of eating disorders, and for them, it just triggers even more so. So I have to have the empathy that even though something that has been such a great tool for me is not going to be a tool for everybody because there's so many layers. And I think in a way, women are constantly bombarded with the information about what diet is and how big we are. I have this video of myself of 2 years old, and I remember like my auntie saying like, wow, Aggie's so fat, like we should do something about it. Like looking back, I look like maybe a slightly bigger 2-year-old, but I remember growing up with an identity of being chubby. And there's a very different standard for women versus men, and even taking that into consideration on top of your genetics, your cultural background, and personal preference in a way, right? So like many layers.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the issue of body perception as a child, or even as a 2-year-old or as a baby. One of the things that I wrote about in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, which isn't a diet book, it's an anti-diet book, and it's really about metabolism and how you can get a healthier metabolism.
Yeah, we're going to get there. Please.
Are the myths that we live with, right? Mm-hmm. So the myth of metabolism being genetic, and then there's nothing you can do about it. But there's a big myth about body fat, and I think that we carry this with us regardless of who we are. It's rampant throughout society that fat is bad, and therefore, if you feel like you are fat, there's something wrong with you, and then you carry that, in your head, and it becomes part of your identity, and the opposite truth, thin is good, and so you think you're thin, then you carry that with your identity. These are cultural biases that can actually be quite damaging if we don't put them in the right context. And so one of the things I try to do is to reassure people, including women, maybe especially women, that this whole idea of body fat needs to be rethought about. And this is what the science is teaching us, that while you might look in the butcher section of a grocery store at a big steak with a big thick rind of fat and think that's disgusting and you don't want to eat it, the fact of the matter is that that there is a situation in which we think of body fat and it makes us smile, makes us happy. And that's when we see babies. Babies, fat, chubby babies actually make us feel happy. And in fact, what I say is that if you ever walked into a room with a healthy baby, they're always chubby, and people squeeze their cheeks, and they've got the big fat arms and the big fat legs. It's all part of it. Makes us feel joy. If, on the other hand, you saw a baby that looked like a runway model with chiseled cheeks and thin arms and long, thin thighs, you would think that that baby is sick or there's something wrong with that baby, and you'd be completely correct. And so I think that the idea of understanding how fat is important for us and having and assigning that importance to our biology and to our identity is very helpful to as a counterweight to just simply the sociological perception of body composition or body fat. I mean, frankly, all kids look the same until when they're 4, they're 5, they're 6, they all look, boys and girls, they all look exactly the same, right? They can even wear the same clothes. It's only after you start getting into puberty, in fact, the shape of the body, both male and female, but especially female, begins to actually change, and that change in shape is sculpted, kind of like Michelangelo. It's sculpted by body fat and hormones, and both for both genders. That's incredibly important. So I think rather than just simply look at ourselves in a mirror, I always say when you step out of the shower in the morning, you're drying yourself off. You're inevitably going to look in the corner of your eye. You're going to see something maybe you didn't like, and then you're going to step on the scale. And then if that number isn't the one you want, you're going to curse yourself. It's the wrong way to do it. If we realize that who we are was shaped, we are shaped by our hormones. We are shaped by development. We're hardwired. And of course, genetics do play a role. There's something wonderful about what we carry with us through life. And so then the question is, how do we optimize? How do we enhance? How do we get the best fit for who we actually all are as individuals? And that's physically, that's hormonally, that's, I think, mentally. The mental health aspect is very important. Your gut health is important, the gut-brain axis. And of course, it's, food is, the nutrition is important. And it's not just about superfoods. I get pretty worked up when people start trying to sell the concept of a superfood, because it's not really about a food. There are lots of different foods that are wonderful. It's not the superfood, it's really the super body. And I think that if we appreciate the power that's within each of our bodies and start from that perspective, it's a lot easier to be able to say, I wonder what I can do to actually make myself feel good about myself, but also advance my own health.
Okay, so you mentioned that it's a misconception that we can inherit a bad metabolism. What are some of the other misconceptions about the weight loss, and how is weight loss different for women?
Okay,
If there is.
so look,
The idea is that it's harder for women to lose weight. That's definitely that's what people think.
yeah. Well, so first of all, the first myth is that that our metabolism is the roll of the dice. It's like going to a casino and rolling the dice and just seeing whatever fate, whatever chance, whatever the dice came up with, that's what we get when we're born. It's actually not true. Our metabolism is hardwired, is a program in our body, the same way that your operating system is hardwired into your laptop. And that makes a lot of sense, because when we're born, your kidney and my kidney work the same. Your eyes and your heart were hardwired. We're all designed to work the same. There's functions that have to work in people in very much the same way. And metabolism is no different than that. All right. So we're all largely born with the same metabolism. Now, the caveat, the footnote, is that, of course, there are diseases of metabolism. There are genetic diseases that change metabolism. But when we come out of the box, and I say that like the laptop, if you and I went to a different computer store from where you live or where I live, got the same model, pulled it out of the box, plugged it in, and then charged it up, and then hit the start and heard the sound, the boot onto the computer, the same computer with the same operating system would work exactly the same way out of the box. Okay, so the first thing is that most of us are born with very, very, very similar metabolisms out of the box. Okay, and after that, a lot can happen to the program. So, for example, just like your laptop, where it starts out of the box, but you might treat your computer a lot nicer than I treat mine. You might be taking care of it in the right temperature. putting in a cushioned sleeve. You might turn it off at night. You might write an antiviral program. All right. I might spill coffee on mine. I might carry mine in a backpack and it's jostled around and dropped. These are the kinds of things that happen to us in life after we come out of the box with a very similar metabolism that then starts to change the direction in which we go. And this is, by the way, where the behaviors that we actually have and the exposures that we have, if you have endocrine disruptors, right, that can affect your hormones. And this is probably, women are probably much more sensitive to this in a phenotypical way, meaning that you can actually see it compared to men, where the damaging effects might actually be hidden. But for women, so much of I told you the Michelangelo sculpture of the body, starting very early in life, can actually be influenced by those exposures and these endocrine disruptors that are in our environment everywhere. Now we know microplastics are a big factor, and plastics are everywhere. Think about the sippy cup that we're actually giving babies. Think about the stuffed animals that are shedding microplastics that we actually give our babies. Think about the
They put in their mouth as well, right? So
and
it's
the
like,
binkies, the pacifiers that go into babies. So you start realizing that some of the changing in directions that we all go individually. All right. Really start at the very as we come out of the box as we're younger. And so this message, by the way, is for parents as well as for people who are adults or young adults or older adults. The thing is that we have to really understand that so much of what happens to us happens at the very beginning of our life.
beautiful. So would you say that now that that would be a misconception, right? That we have
Yeah.
uneven metabolism. Are there any other misconceptions that you
Okay.
say?
Yeah. So this whole idea about having the same metabolism, a very similar metabolism at birth is one myth. That it's different is a myth. We're all more or less the same. All right. Now the second myth is that think about it, when you're a teenager and you see teenage kids full of energy, running around, going crazy, eating multiple dinners, bouncing off the wall with energy, people think their metabolism is actually going through the roof as they're growing. That's a common misconception as well, because here's what has been discovered about human metabolism. There's a study of 6,000 people over 20 countries, and 90 researchers were involved. And they looked at people from 2 days old to 92 years old, the entire human lifespan, and looked at their metabolism. Okay. And they looked at it from 20 countries. So Africa and Russia and China and South America, everywhere, all the differences out there, all of Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. All right. So it's a real population sample. And what they did is they studied everyone's metabolism at their different ages using the same technique, which is they gave them a drink of water, a cup of water. And you're saying, well, how could that work? Well, what scientists do is they can take water, which is H2O. I think most people recognize the symbol for water, the chemical symbol for water, H2O. You can tweak the hydrogen, the H. You can tweak the oxygen, the O. Give them a cup of water with that tweaking, drink it, and then your body, your metabolism is going to process the hydrogen and process the oxygen in ways that you can measure. How do you measure it? You measure it in your breath, okay? You measure it in your blood, and you measure it in your urine, okay? And what they did is they studied these 6,000 people from 2 days old to 90 plus years old across all these countries, and they found that human metabolism is hardwired to go through only 4 stages all throughout our life, okay? And the way they got this information, and this pertains to body fat, is that when they first gave everybody the drink and they measured the metabolism, the results that they had were all over the map, just like you'd expect. Yeah, I knew everybody was different, and I knew that every genetics made everybody different. But what they did is these researchers knew the age of the individual, they knew the gender of the individual, they knew the body size of the individual, the body weight. And what they were able to do using machine learning and AI, they were able to subtract from the metabolism result the impact of extra body fat. So in other
Wow.
words, everyone has got different levels of body fat. When you subtract that out and correct it to the human healthy levels of body composition, remove the effect of excess body fat. The results of metabolism being all of that suddenly became crystal clear. Only 4 stages of human metabolism. It starts at when you're born. Everyone's metabolism is the same. From 0 to 1 years old, the metabolism goes up, 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 up to 50% higher than when you are actually an adult. So, boom! First year, your metabolism skyrockets like a rocket ship. And then from 1 years old to 20 years old, the teenage years, where everybody thinks that your metabolism is soaring because you're growing up, metabolism is going down, 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 down to adult level. Okay, so when you're a teenager, your metabolism is going down. All right, and then
Wow.
from adult level, from age 20 to age 60, and here's the mic drop result. From 20 to 60, when they removed the effect of excess body fat in 6,000 people from 20 countries, what they found is in 20 to 60, human metabolism is hardwired in the operating system to be rock stable. Doesn't change when you're 30, doesn't change when you're 40, doesn't change when you're 50, doesn't change when you're 60. All right. And what that means is that 60 can be the new 20 if you follow the hardwiring of the metabolism. And then finally, let me tell you, that's the third stage of metabolism. The fourth cycle of metabolism, from 60 to 90, you have a 17% decline in metabolism from the 60 to 90. All right. Now, that's how we're hardwired. That's how the operating system works. Obviously, as we go through our lives, our journey, some people have a huge amount of difficulty with weight and their metabolism changes. So here's what they did. Remember, I told you had this experiment. When you remove the effect of excess body fat, that's how the metabolism is revealed. That's the removal of the that's the uncloaking of the statue of David. All right, you see
Yeah.
how
But
hidden it is.
how would you, so how does fat impact
Right.
that?
So when you throw the fat back into the system, excess body fat, you crush the metabolism. All right. So it's not that a slow metabolism causes you to gain body fat. It's that extra body fat slows your metabolism. That's
So it's a
another
catch
myth.
22, right? Because um, it's definitely true that a lot of times that's one of the myths that really annoy me is that people think that if the skinny people, the fit people is like, oh my God, it's so easy. I'm having 4,000 calories a day and I have 6% body fat. And I know people that barely eat anything and they feel like, no, I'm like putting on fat just looking
Yeah.
at food, right? So there's definitely like different ways of like the more fat you
Yeah.
have, the harder it is, and
But but
it's
here- but here's the thing. It is true. It's a catch-22, and this is why our journeys actually start to diverge based on our behavior. Because if you start overeating, you will actually just store their body naturally. Will store the fuel. That's what fat cells do. It's a very healthy thing, but then it'll actually store more and more, and then you'll actually start to gain more body fat, and then your metabolism will slow down. And then when that slows down, when your metabolism starts slowing down and your body fat continues to grow, it actually makes you want to eat more. And so then it becomes this
yeah.
circle of the drain, so to speak. But I'll tell you, here's something interesting. So one of the other myths is that it's a slow metabolism that causes you to gain body fat. But in fact, it's gaining extra body fat that at some level slows your metabolism at a very
Mhm.
early stage. So that's another myth. The other myth is that between the ages of 20 and 60, when you're middle age, you're going to slow down no matter what. I think this is a very, very common misperception that our metabolisms, there's nothing we can do about it because when we hit 40, we're going to have to get different clothing and our body shape is going to change or nothing we can do about it. So, you just sort of, it's a identity crisis actually for many people, especially women entering the middle age, that their metabolism is going to change and they're going to gain a lot of weight. Now,
Mhm.
I just told you the research shows us, in fact, that's not how the human body is hardwired. But it is true that there are many women who are struggling with this problem in middle age, and hormones can actually make a big difference. And I think this whole shift in hormones actually alters the environment in which our cells, including our fat cells, including our insulin, including our glucose use changes. And it also alters the way that our brain perceives food. And so, and I have to say one additional thing, besides just sort of joining the side of, gender specific changes in metabolism, which is that, look, when any individual starts hitting that middle-aged life at 40, we have our mindset is very different when we hit our 40s and 50s. It's not the same that we're in our 20s. In our 20s, we've got time to actually do all this stuff. When you're 40s, you're starting to worry about your partner. You're worried about your mortgage. You're worried about your job. You're worried, you're worried, you're bombarded, but you're worried about the economy. You're worried about your boss. You're worried about the public health. There's so many things that overwhelm us on top of the hormonal changes that occur, that then you start adding a little bit of behavior shift in it, and all of a sudden you start really veering. And I think the point I want to make is that we're hardwired to operate in a certain way. It doesn't take much, even at the beginning of our early days in life when we're children, to begin kind of veering us into a different direction. And then when we hit middle age, against the pattern that we're supposed to actually have, we're hardwired to have, all these forces, the sociological forces, the hormonal forces, the biological forces, emotional forces, hormonal forces, they really begin to alter our pathway. And this is why I think the good news is that the science is telling us that no matter what age you are, but especially if you're in middle age, and especially if you're a woman, they're understanding your body allows, and how to actually take control of your metabolism, allows you to get more confident in taking the steps that can actually help you get back towards the path that your body wants to be on, as opposed to where you're off path.
So what about, for example, like human growth hormone that's, some believe slows down around 35, the production. And that big craze about injecting it so you feel like you can lose weight faster.
Yeah, listen, I'm a medical doctor. I've written plenty of prescriptions. I've given plenty of injections, but I'm also somebody who, as I have evolved my thinking into looking at how we can leverage our own biology and use food, diet, and lifestyle to be able to approach that, I caution people to think carefully before you start to inject things into yourself. And this could also be, the GLP-1 agonists, the Ozempics and other things. Look, they will work. I guarantee you, drugs that are developed, including growth hormone, recombinant human growth hormone, you inject them, you're going to get an effect. They are powerful. They are sledgehammers in the biology. You will get an effect. The real question is, number one, is that the healthiest thing for you in the long run? And is it sustainable? And the answer is generally no. All right. Number two is that, are there side effects that, you might not anticipate that you might pay the price for? And the answer is sometimes you can actually veer off that. So, I would say, a lot of the biohacking trends that are really trying to measurement, no problem. Like, take a look at all the measurements.
I guess my question is not whether we should use it, but we do know that like we have less of a human growth hormone when we get older, and so that has an impact. That like it is true that what a lot of women that I meet, they're like, oh my God, in my 20s, it was much easier for me to lose weight. Now I have 2 kids and I'm 42 and it's not as easy and I eat much less and I don't know how to lose the weight. And, I'm perimenopause and what do I do? What would you say that to?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think what you sort of, again, this is getting to know yourself. You need to really broaden the perspective from simply the number on the scale or your figure in the mirror or your dress size. I think what you really want to do is to be able to take stock of all the components of your life, including your emotional stress, including all the factors that could impact how you feel, your sleep, your stress levels, your social context is also really important. I think that your diet, very, very important, and your level of physical activity. These are some of the basic components that if you really take stock of, everyone's looking for a magic bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Quickly hand me the diet and I'll go on it. Damn, it's not working. I can't do anything about it. Like, I'm really frustrated. I tried this and I tried that. It's really more of a comprehensive thing. I can tell you if there's, if you're asking me what I would say to women who are struggling with multiple things that are happening in their lives, who are trying to lose weight, I would say one thing. If there's one first thing to think about, I would say think about your gut health. All right. Gut health is something that we're beginning to recognize is so powerful and so poorly known and understood. The term people might understand, but we've got 39 trillion bacteria in our gut. And we're not generally measuring our bacteria. So people talk about the gut microbiome, they might take probiotics, but do you know what your gut microbiome is really composed of? Have you measured it? We can now measure it. You can take a look at the diversity of your gut bacteria. You can see if you've got harmful bacteria. You can see if you are missing good bacteria. And this is really what we're beginning to understand, because when you understand that many people have dysbiosis, which is a problem of their healthy gut ecosystem, they're going to have trouble losing weight. Their metabolism is going to be off. Their insulin sensitivity is going to be off. Their glucose utilization, glucose tolerance is going to be off. Their metabolism of lipids, body fat, and fat and cholesterol are going to be off. All right. And so by looking at where you are in your gut health, and this is something that I recommend everybody do. I try to do this with most of the people that I'm working with to try to improve their health. First talk through and to do a real good audit on where you are and what the factors are. Second, ask yourself, how's my gut health doing? And if you don't really know, it's worthwhile taking a look at, well, have you measured it? Can you measure it? And doing a gut microbiome test is simple today. You can actually send away for a kit. You can do a swab, send it away, and in about 2 weeks, you'll actually have a profile of yourself that tells you a lot more about your health, your healthy makeup that you didn't know before. And the foods that you eat can influence your gut microbiome, whether you're fasting or not. And that's really an important aspect.
All right, perfect. So let's imagine you can imagine you're a 37-year-old woman, or you can just imagine I came to your office and I said, Dr. Lee, I've tried everything. I just had 2 kids and I can't, I'm clearly overweight. Say I would like to lose 20 pounds to get back to some sort of normal, right? So what would be the first steps? Because I love that people have access to you right now through this interview, and I would love to help them like what are some of the actionable steps? Obviously, it's better to do it with a doctor. So
Yeah.
what would you recommend? Like, okay, I want to start with my gut to understand. Would you check your hormones as well?
Well, so here's what I would do first. I would say create a life diary. So you break down and start to record over a couple of weeks what you're eating, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Record it. You could take a date book and write those things down. So you really have an understanding. You can audit exactly what you're actually doing. Most people don't even realize how their behaviors. If you don't write it down, you're going to forget. You're going to forget about it. You might underestimate what you're actually doing, or you might remember something that you're actually doing. So doing a food diary is important. When do you eat and how much you eat is actually a really important thing. You could take pictures of it as well. And another simple way to actually document it. I think recording your sleep is also really important. What time do you sleep, and do you feel like you get good sleep? And what do you feel like when you wake up in the morning? How many hours did you sleep? Sleep, really critical for our overall health in ways that you might not even appreciate. You don't get good sleep, you can have brain fog. Why? Because the lymphatic system, the sewers of Paris in your brain didn't open up widely enough because you didn't get good enough sleep. Now you've got toxins that are staying in your brain, and those toxins actually alter your clarity of how you want to behave, right? So that's important. I would actually say looking at your stress levels and rating your stress levels is also really important on a day-to-day level. All right. So doing this kind of an audit is super important to be able to know where you are.
Approach, right? It's not just like what you're eating, but also how is your lifestyle and how are your stress levels, which are obviously not these are harder, right? Like if you tell a mom of two, I don't have kids, but I imagine if you're a mom of two and you tell, oh, I think you should sleep better, that, I always hear like, oh, it's easy for you to say I only have 6 hours. To which I respond, I'm like, do you wear biohacking glasses? Do you actually reduce your phone? Do you like turn off the Wi-Fi at night? Because if I only had 6 hours, make the most of it, right? Like people are so nonchalant, or they're feeding their baby in front of their phone at 3 a.m. I'm like, no wonder you're not getting any deep sleep and are exhausted. So I think this.
Exactly. So right to your point, looking at all those parameters often reveals some actionable things. Put away your device a couple of hours before you go to sleep. All right. Don't expose yourself to blue light. Very important thing you can actually do. Don't eat a midnight snack. Don't eat after dinner. When you put your dishes away, that's it. That actually allows your hormone levels, your insulin levels, and your glucagon levels to actually kind of resume more to their normal state, preparing for sleep, where then your metabolism will switch gears into fat burning mode, all right, which will then help you lose weight. So a lot of people don't realize is that when you actually get good quality sleep, even if you're not physically active, you're not working out when you're sleeping, you're actually burning body fat during that time. But only if you actually optimized yourself. Can't have your insulin sky high from having eaten ice cream before you go to sleep. Not to mention the scrolling through and getting the blue light into your retinas and changing your brain. I mean, as you just pointed out, Aggie, I mean, so the first thing I do is I really try to encourage people to take stock. And if you record yourself, or if you try to remember or record these parameters over the course of 2 weeks, you'll get a pretty good idea of what your life is really like. You might remember yesterday, you're probably not going to remember 2 or 3 days ago, but if you write it down, you actually will. That's one thing. But then just kind of diving right into it, I would say, I encourage people to check their gut health. If you're a biohacker and you don't know your gut microbiome makeup, your gut diversity, whether you actually have pathogenic, harmful organisms in your gut microbiome, then you're missing data. You want to actually get that data. That data is important because, and it's not just doing a one-off test. You want to see where you are. Take your temperature now. See where you stand, then make some changes based on the data, just like you would if you had a continuous glucose monitor or measuring your hormones. Remeasure in 2 to 3 weeks and see if you've actually improved your makeup. Is the neighborhood any better? The neighborhood of your gut bacteria. A lot of people don't realize, listen, your good, healthy gut bacteria controls your immune system, controls inflammation, controls your hormones, controls your mental state, because your gut bacteria text messages your brain, all right, and helps release serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, very important hormones. And if you don't have a good community of bacteria, it's like a neighborhood. You have a good neighborhood in where you live, everybody's fine. It's a functional neighborhood. People enjoy being around each other and seeing each other. You wave to the person, pulling out in the morning. You say hello to them when you're walking your dog. But a dysbiotic microbiome, meaning you have problems in your gut bacteria, which many people do, all right? It could be that you have some bad actors that have snuck into your good neighborhood. It's like having a drug dealer move into your neighborhood. Suddenly that house that used to have great neighbors in it, has a bad guy living in it. And when that bad guy lives in it, turns into a crack house. All of a sudden the neighborhood's not as good, not as safe anymore, and it attracts other bad actors into the place. And that's exactly our gut microbiome. And so you want to actually know, do you have good actors or bad actors? And how diverse is your neighborhood? You want to have diversity. We know diversity is important for a good, healthy community. Same deal. If you want to have a diverse gut microbiome, you want to eat lots of diverse plant-based foods, not the same thing. And this is one thing that I always tell people who are biohacking and they try to find that formula, like what's that one thing, that one drink, what's that one shake that I need to have, and that's it. I'm good. I'm going to control everything. actually your gut bacteria enjoys diversity. So you
Mm-hmm.
really, if you want to be disciplined about it, write down, the 20 or 30 types of vegetables that are different colors that you could actually get from the grocery store, and make sure that you're not eating the same thing all the time. That's another example. So I think gut health connects to the diet. Once you get to the diet, you can start again, auditing. Are you eating things that are not healthy for you, ultra processed foods, regular soda, diet soda, those kinds of things, diet yogurt, low fat yogurt? Those things are not good for you. Actually, they wreck your metabolism and help, and they make it harder to lose weight. And a lot of people don't realize, unless you really go into that. Again, this could be looking at your food diary and picking out the individual things that you should be eating less bad stuff and eating more good stuff. And the good stuff is actually going to help build your gut bacteria, which is going to, from the inside out, help, your gut bacteria will biohack you in ways that you don't even know, and help you
Oh,
improve your overall function.
what time do you have dinner?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. So in general, I have dinner around 7 o'clock, and I think that I probably, like many people, I eat it like an American. I'm done by eating by 8 o'clock. I'm not a Spaniard. I don't eat the Spanish style or Greek style. I don't eat at 9 o'clock and finish eating at 11 o'clock. I have a pretty regular diet. I try to eat at the same time every day, and when
Hmm.
when I'm done eating, I don't eat anything in the evening. Like when I'm done for the day, and that helps get me into that fasting state, which then gets my metabolic hormones in a better place. So when I'm sleeping, I can actually burn that body fat. That said, I'm pretty busy and I travel a lot. And so, I think one of the things that's challenging, and that we have to take it easy on ourselves, is that when we're traveling or when we get into a busy stretch, you needed to be able to take it easy on yourself, like not to feel that you have to do, if you're not doing the exact right thing, that you're a loser. Hey, listen, you do the best with what you can.
Yeah.
My default is that if I can't eat something that I enjoy that's healthy for me, I'd rather not eat. I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
I know that I'm better off that way than succumbing and eating something that's not going to be good for me, and
Mhm.
worse, eating something I don't like that isn't good for me. And that happens when you're traveling a lot, right? Think about it. You're at the airport. You feel like you should be eating lunch and there's nothing good. Oh, they just serve something to you. Or you walk by some burger joint and they're like, I should just grab something here. No, you don't have to. I
Yeah.
would I would rather choose not to do something I don't prefer, that's not good for me, and just wait until that next opportunity when I actually have something that I enjoy and that's good for me.
Well, that's actually really beautiful. The reason I was asking because I tend to have my dinners quite early because I'm a big fan of fasting. Not
Weird.
every day, but I try to fast. But I also love working out, lifting weights. And then a lot of times I need to eat before I lift weights. I see a massive difference. I'm just not as strong, and I get dizzy and I do need to eat my calories, but I do like working out in the morning. And so a lot of times I have my dinner at like 4 p.m., and not only it helps me, we have a little within my community, I have a few of my friends that we meet up for 4 p.m. dinners, and the restaurants are empty, and we always joke that this is the best time. But like, it allows you to not only see better because all the food is digested, you have incredible sleep, and then I wake up in the morning and have my breakfast as I wake up, can go to the gym. Obviously, not a big breakfast, but there are so many ways to implement fasting that doesn't need to be just,
Yeah,
you know.
no, absolutely. And even that sounds like something that's worked really well for you. And back to this whole idea of individualization,
Mhm.
based on your your goals, your health goals, and your lifestyle and what you're able to achieve, you found this 4 o'clock dinner actually works really well for you, and makes you feel good to be able to do that. That's exactly what you should be doing, you know.
Yeah.
And at another stage in your life, your goals might change, your life might, your life constraints might change, and you might adjust. But you will, um, live within your skin to try to stay within the pattern that's going to allow you to live your best life. That's what's important for people to do. I think that if you're biohacking, I always tell people that, biohacking is a wonderful thing, but it's a tricky thing too, because it can make you feel like you can only do things one way, X and
That's so
Y,
cool.
you know, and that's
Yeah.
not true. I think you want the data. The data is the data. That's amazing. Now you
Hmm.
take, and this is how scientists do it. You take the data. That's not the gospel. The data are the facts. Now you got to fit your reality around those facts to figure out what you can actually do. And then guess what? You can measure again. That's the wonderful thing about knowing.
Oh, it's so beautiful. If you have you changed your mind on anything nutrition wise? Like, for example, ideal macro breakdown. Do you count your macros? And is there any kind of like um, macros that you maybe, I don't know, maybe you thought the carbs are evil and now you feel like it's actually pretty good, or a specific nutrient,
Yeah,
that you.
honestly, I'll tell anybody who's listening or watching. I have people ask me like, Dr. Lee, what diet are you on? Or, what foods don't you eat? Or, they want to know that simple answer from me. I should tell people that I'm a pragmatist. I'm very practical. I also enjoy the taste of food. Like I enjoy food. I don't enjoy eating. Like I don't gorge, but I do enjoy food as part of humanity and part of culture. Um, and I like diversity. So I try not to do the same things all the time. Uh, that said, I also find that I enjoy less if I'm counting all the time. And so I try to take smaller portions of things that I really enjoy. I'm very sensitive to what's in the food, meaning I pay a lot of attention to what's in the food. If I'm cooking myself, I pay a lot of attention to what's in the ingredients of what I
Hmm.
buy. A lot of people don't look at the ingredients. Oh, stevia is good for you. Well, pick up that box of stevia, and you actually see some of them, they actually add a lot of other fillers in there that you don't want to be putting into your body. I now have become very sensitive. I've become very alert to microplastics,
Hmm.
and the microplastics are everywhere. I mean, listen, you're lifting weights, in the gym. How often have we in the past just taken a plastic water bottle, either get a commercial water bottle or have our own favorite colored water bottle that we bring along with us, or put it into the bicycle or our backpack? Hey, you know what? That thing is shedding microplastics and nanoplastics into our bloodstream, which is
Hmm.
found in blood, and now we're finding it inside the plaques that block our arteries. And they're finding that people who have plastic embedded in their arteries have a fourfold increase in getting heart attack or stroke.
Wow.
I mean, it's serious. That's a serious deal. So, I just noticed you're drinking from a glass, right?
Yes, and I have my water delivered in glass, so I don't drink tap water. I'm a water freak. I
Very,
love, yeah.
very smart. Very smart.
'Cause I'm
And
like, I drink so much of it every day. Like that's my whole theory. Like maybe you have a piece of chocolate that's processed, but you had this much of chocolate today. But
yeah,
water, I have like, 4 liters, what that would be in a gallon, right? I have a gallon of it. So if it's bad quality, that's tap or from a plastic bottle, that's just
you're
a
you're
simple math would make sense.
your body is a big sponge, and if you actually drink poor quality water, you can squeeze the water out, which you'll eventually sweat it out or pee it out. But the fact is that then you are the sponge that's accumulated all that other stuff. And so, microplastics, are something that I previously didn't pay as much attention to because I knew at the time that we
Hmm.
didn't have any data to suggest what the health harms might be. Now it's starting to become crystal clear. They're actually finding microplastics in all these organs. Like again, I know that your program's for women, but guess what? The next time if you're a woman, you are watching a man drink out of a plastic bottle. They're finding microplastics in testicles, and they're finding
Hmm.
microplastics in semen. All right, that's crazy. Like how did they even get there? So this is actually something I've become a lot more sensitive to. That's the kind of macro that I've been much more
I love
sensitive
it.
to.
Yeah, that's super interesting. But do you aim to have at least like, 1 gram of protein per your body weight,
Yeah, I
or?
do. I do. But I try not to get too fixated on it
Mhm.
because it depends on how I'm feeling. If I'm, like if I feel less hungry, I'm not going to force myself to eat more. I really try to kind of go with the flow, and I also try to stay with. I'm trying to think about how to explain this. I try to go with traditional cuisines recipes, like, and I call my own pattern of eating, my style of eating, I call it Mediterranean style eating. So how the Mediterraneans eat, or how the Asians eat. Somewhere I integrate both of those. I cut down on the amount, so the calories are down. Most of those types of diets are also lower in red meats, meat protein, animal protein. They're higher in plant-based proteins. They're high in fiber, and they can have seafood. I would say I mostly eat a vegetarian style eating, but
Mhm.
I'm not a vegan. I'll eat things that every now and then that are not. I try to avoid fried foods for sure,
Mhm.
and I try to avoid anything that's ultra processed. And anything that has the macros I really try to avoid are things that have artificial flavoring, artificial sweeteners, those kinds of things. So I look at nutrition differently, Aggie, than I think the traditional, carbs and fats and proteins. And I know that from a training perspective, that can be
Well,
really.
I don't count either because for me personally, it builds an unhealthy relationship with food as a woman. So like, I feel like I want to look at food in terms of nutrients than macros because that's
Mm.
like, how much nutrients actually is in food. But I do try to eat protein. I think that
Yeah,
just keeps food at home.
protein is absolutely critical for muscle mass, and especially as you get older, to be able to maintain healthy muscle mass, and especially in women. Now, the other thing that I want to say is that food has macronutrients, macros, but actually the micronutrients are where the biggest discoveries are made in food as medicine. And I'm a food as medicine researcher. So we're beginning to recognize that lycopene, which is found in tomatoes and watermelon. In fact, it's one of the natural bioactives, the carotenoids, that actually makes tomatoes red and makes watermelons red. Lycopene actually activates your body's metabolism, metabolic systems to burn harmful extra body fat
Hmm.
just by having lycopene. And it's protective against, for epigenetics. It actually helps protect you from the inside out. Um, Lycopene has been studied, by the way, in women in their mid to late 20s in a study out of Portugal, University of
Hmm.
Porto. They were interested in studying the effect of lycopene by giving a group of women one ripe tomato. That's it. Okay, to eat 1 hour before lunch every day. No change in diet, no caloric restriction, no exercise program, no nutritional counseling. And what they wanted to do is to find out what was the impact of the lycopene in one ripe tomato. And they gave these women the tomato to eat over the course of a month. And they found after a month that women would actually change their body composition simply with one tomato. And they were able to actually measure the amount of lycopene in that tomato as
Oh,
well to be able to find it. And in the lab, the lycopene actually shrinks body fat. So again, the power of these micronutrients as we're discovering them are making us realize the value of thinking about the types of foods that we're eating. Beets and spinach, by the way, if you want to actually improve your blood flow, they grow close to the ground. They pick up a lot of nitrogen from the soil. When you chew them, so that's why chewing your food, you're chewing beets or chewing spinach, why you want to make it delicious, because otherwise you're just going to chuck it and wolf it down, right? So you want to actually enjoy your food, enjoyment, savoring your food. Um, when you chew spinach, your tongue microbiome, the healthy bacteria in your tongue, actually interact with the nitrogen from the soil in the spinach, and it converts it into a form when you swallow it. that nitrogen, it goes into the bloodstream in the form of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide widens your blood vessels, which causes your blood pressure to decrease, which is better for your overall health, which protects your circulation, is heart healthy, and it protects your brain against stroke, as an example. All right,
Beautiful.
but nitric oxide, when dilating, also brings better blood flow to muscles. So if you're a young person and you're working out and you want to actually really try to get as much blood flow circulation as possible, we've got 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our body. It's not just the length, it's not the mileage. It's also about how much current it can actually put to it. Wider blood vessels bring better blood flow, more oxygen, more micronutrients. That's important. So again, these are the kinds of discoveries that we're making in food as medicine that help us understand that, like, we're just at the beginning we're looking at the tip of the iceberg and picking apart, going from macros to micros, looking at the way the body's hardwired, our physiology, and trying to figure out how do we combat the stresses of normal life in ways that leverage our own systems to be able to help us get healthier.
Yeah. So beautiful. Dr. Lee, that was such a beautiful conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with my listeners. So thank you. Where can people find you and where to get your book?
Oh, well, my book, Eat to Beat Disease and Eat to Beat Your Diet, is sold anywhere books are sold. You can get it online and download it. It'll be on your doorstep tomorrow or whatever. People want to hear more about the kinds of things I'm talking about, come to my YouTube channel. It's Dr. William Lee, L.I. I just started putting a ton of content out there because I get bombarded with questions from readers of my book who say, man, can you tell me more? I'm hungry for more. And so I just started to pound out stuff on YouTube. And then I do masterclasses. You can sign them up on my website at Dr. William Lee, drwilliamleeli.com. And then for people who are really hardcore, who want to just say, look, it's time for me to really use food for my advantage, I teach an online course as well. So I've got different offerings for people that all are based on the same thing in different ways, however you want to access it.
Oh, so beautiful. It was such a pleasure to speak to you. I wish you a beautiful day. I really hope that people join everything that you're offering. And thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you, Aggie. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.